Good morning, good morning. It's so great to be back with y'all. I feel like I've been gone forever. But shout out to my dad and Pastor Dana who held it down for us while we've been gone. And they had great messages that they brought to you guys. And we're still continuing to pray for the Brazil team. As you can see, they're still there. They're making their way back to Manaus, which is about a 12-hour river ride. Okay, so they're on their way back to Manaus, but they will be back on Tuesday. So continue to pray for them. So I have been assigned in this series, Sandcastles, Psalm 61 through 70. And today, my message is called, Let It Burn. Let it burn. But I was praying and meditating on what to say this morning. And when I read them, I was like, okay, the psalmist is talking about God being our rock, being our refuge, being our strength. And I was like, okay, I got this. I've preached this kind of message before. And I've spoken several messages on those things, right? He is our rock, and He is our refuge, and He is our strength. Amazing promises that are so, so true. But God led me somewhere different when it came to these passages. And so I want you to hang in there with me today, okay? Hang in there. Okay, we're going to first see this in Psalm 61. Psalm 61, 1 through 4. Oh God, listen to my cry. Hear my prayer. From the ends of the earth, I cry to you for help when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the towering rock of safety, for you are my safe refuge, a fortress where my enemies cannot reach me. Let me live forever in your sanctuary. Say sanctuary. Sanctuary, safe beneath the shelter of your wings. So we see all of those beautiful promises, right? He's our rock of safety. We sang about it this morning. He's our rock of safety in trouble, our fortress, a shelter. But I could not shake that word sanctuary. In other translations, it says tent. Lead me to your tent. And it says, let me live forever in your sanctuary. The word sanctuary here in Psalm 61, 4 is the Hebrew word ohel. I'm saying it that way because it's not how it's pronounced, and I don't want to say how it's pronounced. It's O-H-E-L. And ohel, the word ohel is translated tent of meeting. Tent of meeting, a desire to have permanent residence in His presence. And we first see this with Moses in Exodus 33. Moses led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, and they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Moses knew that in the middle of this wilderness, he wanted to create a space to meet with God, to inquire of God what the next steps were, or just to be in His presence. And we see this in Exodus 33, 7 through 11. It was Moses' practice to take the tent of meeting and set it up some distance from the camp. Everyone who wanted to make a request of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent of meeting, all the people would get up and stand in the entrances of their own tents. They would all watch Moses until he disappeared inside. As he went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and hover over its entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. When the people saw the cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, they would stand and bow down in front of their own tents. Inside the tent of meeting, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Say a friend. Afterward, Moses would return to the camp, but the young man who assisted him, Joshua of Nun, would remain behind in the tent of meeting. You see, the Israelites, they were a stubborn and they were a rebellious people, just like we are, okay? They wandered 40 years in the wilderness. It should have been an 11-day trip to the promised land, but it took them 40 years of wandering. They went in circles and they went around and around for 40 years. It should have been an 11-day journey. You know, a couple years ago, we were in Florida vacationing just like we did, and I decided that we needed to run to Walmart and get a few things that I forgot. I always forget things. We had a trip to Target this time, and I'm not ready to talk about that trip either. It was awful, okay? But Ella and Liam, they decided to go with me, and we were on our way back from the Walmart to the hotel that we were staying at. And the GPS took me a different way because the other side of the road that we went on the way was closed. But the GPS took me to flooded roads. And there were all these cars, and they just kept turning around because they were starting to float. And Liam was like, you could just go through it, Mom. Just go through it. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. So we would turn around, and it kept taking us back to these flooded roads. I was tired. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm frustrated. And after 3 or 4 times of going around, I was losing my chill. Okay, Ella and Liam thought it was hilarious. They thought it'd be a great idea at this time to get out their phones and start recording my multiple meltdowns. And I'm in the city I don't know with traffic. And if you know me, one of my friends calls me 10 and 2, okay? I don't like to drive in traffic. I am a very careful driver. And it was unreal. We were lost. We were going around and around and around. And then these filmmakers in the back said, Mom, you just need to go the way we came. I'm like, okay, geniuses, I've tried that already. The road is closed. And they were just laughing. And you parents have been there when these kids just make fun of you. And I was trying to explain it to them, and I'm like, you just don't even know what I'm saying. Ugh. And so now, even to this day, they will say to me, they're like, Mom, you just don't even know what I'm saying. Ugh. And it actually became a memory. But it was so frustrating at the time and so scary being in an unknown place, wondering if you will ever get back to the hotel where you were staying. And this is where the Israelites were in the wilderness. They were going around and around, thinking they were never going to see the promised land. And Moses, he knew the importance of sanctuary, the tent of meeting with God. He knew the meaning of the importance of God, of talking with God as one does with a friend, is what it says. To ask of him, what's next? And he created that space, the place where the presence of God could dwell and he could dwell in it. So what wilderness are you in today? What struggles are you walking around and around and around? What are the unknown, scary places of your life? And is that sanctuary present in your life? A set apart place where you can just go and be in his presence. And David, it says, they believe, was in a wilderness when he was writing these Psalms. He was running from his son Absalom during his rebellion. But he was in the wilderness. He was longing for that tent of meeting. He was longing for that sanctuary, that place of safety in the presence of God. And it says in Psalm 63, 1-3, "O God, you are my God. I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. I have seen you in your sanctuary and gazed upon your power and glory. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you." It says, my soul thirsts. It's a parched and a weary land. He's talking about his soul, but it was mirroring what he was going through in the physical. Physically in the wilderness, dry and parched and thirsty, yet his soul was feeling the same way. It says, I earnestly search for you. Earnestly, one version says eagerly. The word they use in Hebrew is shakar. It means to seek, to search diligently, to inquire. It can also mean to seek early in the morning or to seek with great eagerness. It's seeing God above everything else, even in the circumstances of a wilderness. The sanctuary is not a passive encounter with God. It's not a passive encounter with God, but it's a pursuing of God and his presence, that no matter the wilderness you are in or the mountaintop that you are standing on, you will create a space for his consistent presence. It's not a passive encounter. He goes on to say that I have seen you in your sanctuary. David had seen God in that set-apart place, that place where he had talked with him just as Moses did, where he talked with him like a friend. And he was longing for that again in the midst of this wilderness that he was in. He was longing for that tent of meeting, that place for him to dwell in the midst of God, where we remember those times and we stand back in awe and we just stand back in reverence of what he's done. In the midst of your wilderness today, can you cry out to God and say, I earnestly seek you? I seek you and your presence. A place where you only seek his face and not his hand. I think a lot of times we come to him just for what he can do for us. But he is wanting us to dwell in his presence, in his sanctuary, in that set apart place just because of who he is. So he can mold us into who he wants us to be in the midst of the unknown, in the midst of the fear. But we have to seek his face and not his hand, where we meet with him face to face as with a friend. You know what? He owes us nothing because he's already given us everything. In the gift of life, walking with him through Jesus, he's already given us everything. The gift to stand in the midst of our wilderness and look into his face and see his power and see his glory. And we should be just in awe of him. Just because he's God and we are not. Where we can say, I trust you. I may not understand what I'm going through. I don't get it, but I trust you. I may have to beat on his chest and ask why, but he can handle that. It's where we say, I'm scared, but I trust your presence. A place where we can say, God, we long for your presence because we have nothing else. Nothing else has satisfied. We've tried every other way. We've tried every self-help book. We've tried drinking. We've tried anything to numb the reality of what we're facing. We run to relationships just because they're there. We've chased dreams that are not of him. We've tried everything of this world, or life has just dealt us a bad hand. And we find ourselves in this wilderness, in this parched, thirsty, dry wilderness. But oh, how amazing it would be to now earnestly seek him, because we are in awe of not just who he is and not just what he can do, but where he's brought us through. A place we acknowledge or we see him. It says it gaze upon his power and glory, because he is the only one who can satisfy. The thirst that this world leaves us so dry and parched, and he is the only one that can satisfy. So we find him in the sanctuary, in the tent of meeting, in the pursuit of his constant presence in our lives, but we also find him through sacrifice. Sacrifice, not a great word we like to hear. No one loves to hear the word sacrifice when it comes to our lives, because it means it's going to cost us something. And as I was praying through all of this, I kept coming back to the word altar. You heard the song this morning sang the altar, at the altar. We sang it at the conference we just went to. And so I thought I was hearing this word just because I've heard this song recently. But we kept coming back to it at this conference, and I was like, it was just confirmation of where God was leading me this morning on asking God, what does this have to do with the Psalms? What does this have to do with the Psalms, the altar of God? And God so gently reminded me, and he said, Rachel, to have a sanctuary, you have to have sacrifice. The altar is where things were brought before God and burned as an atonement for people's sin. To enter the sanctuary, there had to be sacrifice. You know, I've been around here for a long time. I've been around church my whole life. And I'm seeing so much in the church here, in the church globally, of people wanting God's presence, but they don't want the sacrifice that comes with it. After Jesus died and rose again, and he came and visited his disciples and 500 other people, it says they were to go to a room called the upper room, and that he was going to come to them. And if you read in Acts 2, it says they were filled with the power of the Holy Spirit in this upper room. When the Holy Spirit fell on the upper room and people were filled with the power of God, it wasn't meant to stay in the upper room. You were meant to go out with the power of God and do what he has called us to do, which was to go out and make disciples. But we have a lot of upper room dwellers. They want everything that God can give them, but they don't want the sacrifice of going out and doing what he's asked them to do. And in all of the Psalms, it talks about his presence being with you. But a lot of us, we live a life where we're only sitting in his presence on a Sunday morning, or we're only sitting in his presence in an upper room or a prophetic room. All the things that are used to empower you to go out and do what God has asked you to do. Now listen, I'm a Holy Spirit-filled Pentecostal girl through and through. But it's to empower you, not make you look weird. People say the Holy Spirit's weird. No, people are weird. The Holy Spirit isn't weird. And supernatural is not weird, but people make it weird. We can't just be Sunday dwellers, upper room dwellers. The altar must be every day of our lives. And in these Psalms, it speaks of the rock of our salvation, never shaken. But for salvation to happen in the Old Testament, there had to be sacrifice. The Israelites wandering in the wilderness had more to do with them than God. It was an 11-day journey. But they were the ones holding themselves back, getting in the way, complaining, rebelling, taking things into their own hands, making their own idols. They were holding themselves back from getting to the promised land, and some of them didn't even make it. It was their disobedience and their lack of trust in him that kept them from it, that kept them wandering. So where does the altar of sacrifice come in? You see, when sin entered the world, it created a huge gap between us and God. But then God sent Jesus, who was to die a brutal death on a cross, and 3 days later walk out of a tomb so we can have a relationship with him. Our rock, never shaken. Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. He is the ultimate sacrifice for us. So when it was time for this tent of meeting in the Old Testament before Jesus, it was a burnt offering that had to be given on the altar. And I want to talk about the altar of sacrifice for a moment. So stay with me. I'm trying to teach and preach at the same time here. I think sometimes we get to a point where we take the sacrifice that Jesus made on that cross for granted. It's kind of what Dad said this morning during communion. It becomes just another thing. It's what we do. We think he owes us safety. We think he owes us shelter, that he owes us a job. He owes me a husband. He owes me a baby. He owes me restoration and healing because he was the ultimate sacrifice, and we believe it. But guess what? He doesn't owe us anything. He doesn't owe us anything because he's already given us everything. And that is a hope and an assurance of heaven, and that's enough. In the Bible, it's clear that we are still to bring ourselves as sacrifices before the Lord. We see it in the New Testament in Romans 12:1. And it says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. Don't copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect." You know, in the Old Testament, they'd bring dead animals to sacrifice as an atonement for sin. But what we are presenting is living. It says a living sacrifice. We are living because of what he did on the cross. So we are presenting ourselves to him as this living sacrifice. This meaning that it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us the bad habits that we formed in our lives. It's going to cost us relationships that we don't need in our lives, friendships that are not good in our lives. It's going to cost us giving up places that we used to go. It's going to cost us our mouth. It's going to cost us negative thinking. All of those things that have been passed on from generation to generation, it's going to cost us those things. A living sacrifice. You know, I see so often as people give their lives to Jesus, they accept him knowing that he was the ultimate sacrifice for them. And yes, he redeems us from a hell that we deserve, but then we take it for granted. We come in on a Sunday, we raise our hands in worship, we bring our stuff to the altar, we cry, but then we put it right back on our shoulders and we walk right back out. And then we come back next week and we do the same thing over and over. The Sunday dwellers, not sanctuary dwellers. Our lives become a wilderness of dead sacrifice. A living sacrifice is a consistent bringing ourselves to the Lord, bringing the broken and the rough places in our lives to him. You know, Jesus, in his own red letter words, was very clear about taking up our cross, which means every selfish ambition, every insecurity, pride, distraction, obstacle, hindrance, addiction, etc., etc. It must die so we can fully follow all that he would have for us. Jesus said it himself, Matthew 16:24-26. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way and take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? So what are you holding onto? What are you not placing on the altar of sacrifice? That burnt offering, what are you withholding from him? Let's read about the burnt offering in Leviticus and what that was. It says, "Meanwhile, the fire on the altar must be kept burning." Say, kept burning. It must never go out. Each morning, the priest will add fresh wood to the fire and arrange the burnt offering on it. Then he will burn the fat of the peace offerings on it. Say, the fat. Remember, the fire must be kept burning on the altar at all times. It must never go out. He said it twice. It must never go out. And it says there, they will burn the fat and the fire must never go out. The fat of the animal was the most valuable part of the animal to give. It representing bringing their absolute best, their all. So when they would withhold it, it was not acceptable to God. You know, we were in Miami last weekend at VU Church, and this message had started churning in me. I'd started thinking and meditating, what am I going to say? And this whole idea of the altar was in my mind and my heart. And Dawn Cherie Wilkerson spoke a message called Letting Yourself Go. What is that one thing that you are withholding from God, but you trust him with everything else? And I sat there and I was expecting her just to talk about self as in arrogance, as in pride, as in selfishness, et cetera, but then it turned into insecurity, self-image, body image, giftings, and talents where you feel that you lack. And tears filled my eyes as I realized the withholding that I've been doing, where I allow insecurity and self-image and feelings about myself that keeps me from bringing the fat, if you will, to the altar. The best and the worst parts of myself, letting him burn up all my desires so his desires can be birthed in me, from allowing him to burn up that negative self-talk, negative self-image. So I ask you today, what are you withholding from the altar? What is it that's not being burned up because we just can't bring ourselves to lay it down? What are you withholding? Or how about we sit through messages, we talk to mentors, we listen to podcasts, et cetera, and we're all in. And we start to walk toward the altar of sacrifice, but we start to think the cost is too high. So we partially obey. We give some of ourselves, but not this part, which is still disobedience, by the way. Partial obedience is still disobedience. And the fire starts to burn, but we let it go out. I've had so many moments in my life where I felt like the cost just seemed too high. Times where I just wanted to drag my cross instead of picking it up. So what keeps this fire burning? To enter the sanctuary, there must be sacrifice. But to keep it burning, there must be sanctification. Sanctification is being set apart. It's not a static state. It's making someone or something holy. It's where the Holy Spirit empowers us to resist sinful patterns and live a life that is pleasing to him. It's the ongoing work of the Holy Spirit in our lives. That's what sanctification is. And we have talked about a relationship with God as one like Moses, who he talked with God as one would with a friend, which he is. He's a loving God. He's a compassionate God. But one thing that we sang of today, but we dismiss so much in church, is that he is a holy God. We come into his presence so flippantly these days. The reverence of God has been lost. The fear of God, not in a fearful way, but a holy reverence of who he is, an awe of who he is. It's stepping back and realizing that he is a holy God and I'm not. We are just in the process of being made holy. You know, when Jesus finds us and we believe in our hearts and we confess with our mouths, we are saved. It's called justification, just as if we had never sinned. But sanctification is the process to which we become more like him. It's the everyday, creating the space for the sanctuary. It's the presenting of ourselves as living sacrifices as he burns those things off that hold us back. Sanctification is the continual burning off of what we are withholding. Psalm 63, 4 through 8, it says, I will praise you as long as I live. Lifting up my hands to you in prayer, you satisfy me more than the richest feast. I will praise you with songs of joy. I lie awake thinking of you, meditating on you through the night, because you are my helper. I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your strong right hand holds me securely. You know, we talked about the fat of the sacrifice and us being a living sacrifice for God. It says in that verse, you satisfy me more than the richest feast. But the New King James Version says this, my soul will be satisfied with marrow and fatness. It's a satisfaction that is deep, and it comes from being surrendered completely to him with our arms in the air, saying, God, I seek you. I seek your sanctification, where we are filled with his love and worship him without reservation. And I know it's a mixed opinion here if I was to ask, but I do enjoy the fat on meat, on a steak or whatever, okay? I do. Some people don't. And I'm trying to keep these arteries clear, so I'm trying not to do it these days. But I do enjoy it. I watch as people would cut that fat off, and I'm like, what a waste. But when it came to the burnt offering, that was the best part, because it created the best aroma to God. So when we cut off the fat or withhold part of this living sacrifice, the aroma smells more like, I don't fully trust you. You can't have this part. It's not good enough. God, you don't want this part of me. It's too dark. It's too broken. It's too hurt. It's too offended. But let me tell you, that which we think is dead and broken in our lives is exactly what he will use to give us life that is rich and satisfying and lacking no good thing from him. He's a good God. He's a loving God. He is a just God. He's a compassionate God. And he says, that which you think is dead or dark is the living sacrifice I need. I want to take that and I want to use it for my glory in your story. Nothing is wasted on the altar. We sang about it this morning. The consuming fire of God on the altar of our lives will come and burn up that stuff. So we enter the sanctuary with our lives as a living sacrifice, not holding anything back, nothing wasted. We enter the continual burning of the fat and marrow that will satisfy us in a way that we have never been satisfied before, where the fire keeps burning those edges of addiction off, the insecurity off, the depression off, the anxiety off, the hurt off, the offense off, the bitterness off, the anger off, the church hurt, the trauma, etc., etc. The negative talk becomes less, and the lens of self-image becomes clearer and more like the lens of the one who created you. He created you for greatness. He created us for the sanctuary. And the safest place we can be is in the presence of his holiness. You know, a couple months ago, I was feeling very insecure about something in my life. And it's something that I have to continually lay down before him and let him burn up, to be honest. But I keep taking it back off the altar. But this day I was down. I had let my mind spiral the night before. Tears had been shed that I hadn't shed in a long time over something so small and seemingly really insignificant, but to me it was huge. You know, I'm now in my mid-40s, so I'm having to change some things up in my life. So I've started to walk every day. And I usually go in the mornings, and I was walking this morning after such a restless night of dealing with these lies from the enemy. Those lies of everyone walks away. Just isolate. Put that wall back and they won't see your insecurities. God can use so many others. Why is he using me? Just thought after thought after thought that I was not taken captive. I was just letting it run wild. But I'm on this walk and I was thinking of all of those things, and I put some worship music on, and I noticed that when I walk, I always look down at my feet. I always watch my feet, probably because I trip all the time, but I always watch my feet when I walk. Always had my head down. And I immediately heard in my mind, Rachel, lift up your head. And I thought it was me just trying to correct my posture, as I'm trying to do that these days too. And I heard it again as my head drifted towards my feet. Rachel, lift up your head. And as I did, I started to notice things I hadn't seen before. I noticed the beautiful sunrise, or people out in their yards, or beautiful flowers, or different houses that I hadn't seen, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things that I would not have seen if my head was down. And I began to weep. And I didn't know why I was weeping, but I kept hearing, lift up your head, lift up your head. I was crying over the lies that I had picked back up and started to believe again. But I remembered a word that someone gave me. Pastor Chris Spicer was here preaching years and years and years ago. And he pointed me out. I was sitting on the front row, and I had just started leading Bloom. And I remember it well because we had meet and greets back then, and we gave out candy. I'm saying bring it back, but whatever. But I was sitting there with a mouthful of Snickers, okay? And he calls me out, and I remember it so vividly. And he said, Rachel, and he didn't know that we had just named the ministry Bloom. He said, Rachel, the winter of your ministry is over. He said, it's about to blossom like it never has before. And he said, it reminds me of a buttercup, which a buttercup, he's a British guy, Chris Spicer's a British guy, which a buttercup is a wildflower that grows in the grass in England. And as a kid, I remember I would hold my head up towards the sun, and you would hold the buttercup under your chin, and it would reflect yellow under your chin. It was something we did as kids at recess time. It was something fun to do. And he said, your ministry will reflect his glory, so keep your head up. And I remembered this as I was weeping. Rachel, lift your head. And I walked home and I sat in my usual spot, my sanctuary, if you will, and I got out my Bible, and it was right when we were starting the series in the Psalms, and I read this that morning. Psalm 3:3-4. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. I cry aloud to you, Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. You see, he will meet you in the midst of your wilderness. And as you create that sanctuary for him, a place where he can come and speak to you, and you can offer yourself as a living sacrifice where you listen more than you talk, he will remind you of who you are, but also how much further you need to go. The things that need to be continually burning on that altar so that sanctification starts, and so that the fruits of the Spirit can start to grow. The love, the joy, the peace, the patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. The altar of sacrifice we've talked about, but then there is also another altar, and it's the altar of remembrance. Noah built an altar after the flood and its deliverance. Abraham built multiple altars in various locations after receiving divine promises or experiencing God's presence. Isaac built an altar to reaffirm his covenant with Abraham. Jacob built altars reaffirming his covenant with God. Moses built an altar after naming it, "The Lord is my banner." Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land and built an altar after crossing the Jordan River on dry land. Samuel built an altar to commemorate God's deliverance from the Philistines. Multiple examples of God's faithfulness and reminders as they were passed down through generations and generations to remember God's mighty hand and to remember his deliverance. And we're going to read about Joshua when he did this, and it's in Joshua 4:1 and then 3-8. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, remember they had crossed on dry land. The Lord said to Joshua, tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at a place where you will camp tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men that he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, go into the middle of the Jordan in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each one of you must pick up one stone and carry it on your shoulder, 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, they remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. So the men did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan River, one for each tribe, just as the Lord had told Joshua. Then they carried them to the place where they camped for the night, and they constructed the memorial there. A place of remembrance, an altar of remembrance, to remember what God had done, but also what he was going to continue to do. As I was thinking of this, I was brought back to one of my favorite movies in high school. It was called With Honors. It's from 1994. I don't know if it's really that popular because most people don't know about it when I talk about it, but I loved this movie so much. And With Honors was about a movie about a graduate student named Monty who is struggling to finish his program. He loses his thesis and finds it in the hands of a homeless man named Simon Wilder. The two had a rough start, but became unlikely friends, and Simon ended up teaching Monty some really important life lessons. Monty was frustrated one day, saying that this thesis was his life, because Simon had gotten smart and had this thesis, and so he was basically wanting food or lodging for each page, and he'd only get a page back at a time. One was from, and so then he told him, he said, that is your life? A bunch of papers is your life? And Simon said, let me show you my life. And he showed him a pouch that he carried full of stones. Each one represented a significant moment in his life. One was from when he was with the love of his life. One was from the last good night of sleep that he had remembered. The stones represented the richness of his experiences, ones he didn't want to forget. A reminder of the past, but a guide for the future. And at the end of the movie, it shows Monty picking up his first memory stone at his graduation from Harvard. And it reminded me of this moment in Joshua, where they brought these stones as a memorial to God, an altar of remembrance. In Joshua 4, where Joshua is like, go get the 12 stones. They represent the 12 tribes of Israel. We're going to build an altar because we're going to remember what God did. Joshua said, we're not going to forget what he did, that he brought us across the Jordan River on dry land. We're not forgetting his deliverance. And this is what the altar of remembrance is. When we respond to what God is doing in our lives, we come up here, we present ourselves as a living sacrifice to him, saying, I don't want to leave here the same. You are doing something new in me. I don't want to be just a Sunday dweller or an upper room dweller. I want to be a sanctuary dweller, where I want you to begin to burn away those things that have been withholding me from you and everything that you have for me. Help me keep the fire burning. Psalm 66, 5 through 11 and 13 through 16 says this, "Come and see what our God has done, what awesome miracles he performs for people. He made a dry path through the Red Sea, and his people went across on foot. There we rejoiced in him, for by his great power he rules forever. He watches every movement of the nations. Let no rebel rise in defiance. Let the whole world bless our God and loudly sing his praises. Our lives are in his hands, and he keeps our feet from stumbling. You have tested us, O God. You have purified us like silver. You captured us in your net, and you laid the burden of slavery on our backs. Now I come to your temple with burnt offerings to fulfill the vows I made to you. Yes, the sacred vows that I made when I was in deep trouble. That is why I'm sacrificing burnt offerings to you, the best of my rams, as pleasing aroma, and the sacrifice of bulls, male goats. Come and listen, all you who fear God, and I will tell you what he did for me." We see David responded with worship. David responded with worship. Worship is what keeps the fire going, acknowledging that he is God and that we are not. It's worshiping in the midst of our wilderness. It's worshiping in the midst of the fear and the doubt and the pain and the hurt. It's saying Psalm 63, 1 through 8. "O God, you are my God. I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. I have seen you in your sanctuary, and I have gazed upon your power and your glory. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you. I will praise you as long as I live, lifting up my hands to you in prayer. You satisfy me more than the richest feast. I will praise you with songs of joy. I lie awake thinking of you, meditating on you through the night, because you are my helper. I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your strong right hand holds me securely." So this morning, we're going to end with something a little bit different. I want to ask you if you are creating a space for sanctuary, or are you just a Sunday dweller? Are you dragging your cross instead of picking it up? What is the one thing that you are withholding from him, that you think isn't good enough, that you think he won't use, that you think is just a waste? This morning, we're going to worship our way out in just a second, but I have to ask you, are you ready to let it burn? Whatever that thing is that you're withholding, are you ready to bring it and let it burn? You know, we have rocks up here at the front, in the containers at the front here, because I wanted to put something in your hand if God is doing something in you this morning. This altar right here, after 25 years, has many of my tears embedded in this gross carpet, where he began to transform my life, where he began the sanctification process, where I came to him on my knees and gave him everything that I had. But there were so many times when I picked it back up and I walked right out the door. And he's asking us today, are you ready to let it burn? Are you dragging your cross, or are you going to pick it up? Are you going to respond this morning and say, you know what, God, that one thing that I've been holding, I'm going to give it to you today. I'm going to come to this altar and it's yours. I don't know, I'm a little insecure about it, but I'm going to give it to you and I'm going to let you have it. I'm going to let it burn and I'm going to let you do things in me that I never thought possible. And then you're going to take one of these and you're going to keep it, because you're not going to pick it back up. You're going to pick up a stone as an altar of remembrance that, God, I'm not walking out of here the same. I don't want to be a Sunday dweller. I don't want to be an upper room dweller. I want to go out and do what you've called me to do. And so I want to be empowered this morning. I want to let you burn those places of my life off so that you can do all that you have created me to do. So this morning, I'm just going to ask you to respond with worship, to come to this altar, to get a rock of remembrance. But this is only if you are going to leave it here. Don't walk out of here the same. Don't let it be just another Sunday. Don't take his sacrifice for granted. Offer yourself as a living sacrifice. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is wasted at this altar. So we're going to sing this. We're going to allow you to respond as you will. If you want to come up to the altar, it makes sense. We're talking about the altar. Or even just at your seat. And grab one of these. If your life today, you're saying, I'm not walking out of here the same. I'm going to allow him to begin a sanctification process in me that I've never had before. So let's worship this morning.